day 28 of the 30-day solo podcast challenge. I'm David Hooper from bigpodcast.com, and my job is to help you grow a big audience for your message. The way we're doing that on this series, it's via podcasting. The 30-day solo podcast challenge is going to help you clarify your message, and that clarification will help you to attract and build a great audience. You'll make more money because of that. Having the right people to hear your message and having a message that connects with them, that's going to make your sales go through the roof. You're going to be considered the expert, the celebrity. That's going to allow you to charge more money. Plus, when you do a solo podcast, you don't have to worry about sharing that money. You can keep it all. Another thing that you're going to be doing all of is making all the decisions, releasing episodes when you want, changing things up when you want, taking your podcast in any direction that you desire. When you've got a solo podcast, you call all the shots. If you haven't done this already, listen to the intro episode first. This explains the what and the why of everything happening here. To do that, bigpodcast.com/subscribe. There you will find the introduction. There you will also find all 30 days of the 30-day solo podcast challenge. This is a system. I'm walking you through it step by step. Start on day 1, continue to day 30. When you get to day 30, you're not going to believe how much you have improved. Previously, day 27, we talked about what you want people to know about you. These are the things that are going to help you attract that audience. These are the things that are going to help you get more money for the things that you sell. Today, the focus is the opposite of that. What do you not want people to know about you? In other words, what are you hiding? And here's why that's important. By sharing part of your true experience, your authentic self, that's going to give you a leg up on other people that are hiding things. For example, if you've got a shady past, by throwing that out there, that's not a surprise. Imagine if we had an elected official and you knew that he wasn't faithful to his wife, and you knew that he wasn't an honest person. You knew that he had a history of drug use. When you throw these things out into the world, they don't come back to bite you later. People appreciate the honesty. Of course, it doesn't have to be that dramatic. Let me give you an example. After college, I spent a few years moving around. I was working in the music business, though, and because of that, I eventually decided to go back to where I was from, Nashville. That's where I am today. Because I'd lived here previously, I bought a house sight unseen. The documents were done by a proxy. And that sounds risky, but I knew the area. And the proxy was my father, somebody that I trusted. But still, that was a huge leap for me. So a few weeks after getting back to Nashville, I had this new house, a 30-year mortgage in front of me, and I kind of freaked out. So I went and got a job. That job, like a lot of jobs, it didn't just start instantly. They weren't giving me the keys to the place right away. The way it worked was much like a podcast episode. I had an on-ramp. I had pre-employment paperwork, I had to take drug tests, I had interviews, onboarding, training, whatever. And I didn't want anybody to know that I was doing this. Now again, I'm from here. So I knew people who were here, and I was at a park one day, and I saw the mother of a friend I'd grown up with. And she said, "David, great to see you. What are you doing now?" And I told her what I was doing. I'm in the music business. Because I was in the music business. I hadn't even started this thing yet. And that's how I was still identifying myself. I was in the music business. But I didn't want to go into the story. Well, I kind of got a little weirded out. Just got back here. Things are a little bit shaky. I've got 30 years of mortgage payments ahead of me. Didn't mention the other stuff. And she said something that cut through all that. And it wasn't something that I think she meant on purpose, but she said this. She said, "What are you really doing?" And that was humiliating. There's a joke, and there's different versions of it. One in Los Angeles. You say, "I'm an actor." And somebody will say, "Oh, where do you wait tables?" And there's a version of it in Nashville. "I'm a songwriter." "Oh, do you drive for Uber or Lyft? Where do you wait tables?" There are different punchlines to it. And this lady wasn't trying to have a joke at my expense, but she was so used to hearing stories like that, people who weren't really successful in the music business and not even making a living, she assumed I was one of those people. And the truth was, I kind of was one of those people. I was feeling over my head. I was scared to keep going in the direction that I'd been going. And the funny thing is about this job is that I didn't keep it long. Once I finally got it going, I was there only 5 days, 4 days and about an hour. If you count that I went on the 5th day, I flipped out, quit on the spot. But I still thought about that moment, and I think about that moment a lot, and that question a lot. What are you really doing? I think if I'd been a little bit more honest with myself during that time and shared what I was going through with others, I think I could have saved myself a lot of headache, a lot of agony, a lot of worry. And possibly, if I'd opened up to people about this, I might have had some better opportunities open up. I went outside the industry. I went into a marketing job, which is what I do. I'm a marketing person, but it wasn't in the genre or the business that I really loved. So I ended up going a different route. It all worked out. 4 days, maybe a couple of hours of employment. It's a good story. My friend Rick Roberts, the comedian, says, if it doesn't work out, you'll have a better story than if it did. But I tell you this story to say that your biggest fear, what you're worried that people will find out, and in the case for me, it was all internal. You're a failure. You're not making as much money as you need to. It's really not that big a deal. A lot of it's internal. Nobody notices it. And as I found out, because after 4 days and a couple of hours of employment, that wasn't a whole lot of money, didn't really change things for me, you're probably fine. It's not a big deal at all to you or other people. Your situation, the things you don't want people to know about you, it may be less dramatic, it may be more dramatic. Again, I think we work these things up in our head to be a lot more than they actually are. And I wouldn't want to force you to do something that is outside of your comfort zone when it comes to this, because there are some very serious things that truthfully have nothing to do with your podcast or with your ability to do your job. But maybe this is something that you want to write down, you want to think about. As I usually suggest, do a few bullet points, an intro, the meat of an episode, an outro that wraps it up in a nice bow. Hit record it. I don't know if you want to go that far. Maybe you're worried about somebody hearing you, even if you're not going to release it, and you just want to write it down and burn it afterwards. That's okay. But do think about this stuff. Do think about what would happen if somebody found this out. It might not be as big a deal as you think that it is. A couple of weeks ago, day 14 of the 30-Day Solo Podcast Challenge, I talked about James Hayden. And I met James via an article that he had written, which was about guesting on podcast. And the reason he was guesting on podcast was because it helps him to accept his stutter. I had a great conversation with James asking him about that article. And I asked him, I said, if we could go back a couple of years, would you have thought that you would ever be doing this, guesting on podcast? And he said, hell no. It was something that seemed inconceivable to him. And now it's a regular thing. You may find the same thing. And maybe I'm taking this question way deeper than what you're thinking. Maybe it's just something where you've got a lot of guilt. I mean, I'm not the one who's judging what's a big deal and what's not a big deal. Maybe you're a preacher. You stole a candy bar when you were a kid. You're carrying around a lot of guilt about it. Maybe that's your thing. Write it down. Burn it. Work with it. Me personally, if I found that out, I wouldn't think that's a big deal. And you'll be surprised. On that note, we've got a guy here in Nashville. He is the head guy, minister, preacher, pastor, whatever you call him, of a mega church. And he killed an old lady in cold blood. He was on death row in Texas, got off death row, had a life sentence, somehow got out. Now he's got the keys to the church. People don't think it's a big deal. Well, some people do. But obviously, as head of a mega church, a lot of people don't. Not only are they showing up every Sunday, they're throwing a ton of money in the collection plate. So write down your deep, dark secrets. If you want to record it, great. If you want to burn the paper that you wrote them on, great. But do think about being more transparent, more forgiving with yourself, and more honest with listeners. There's a lot of data. If you're listening to this on a smartphone, that phone may be listening to you right now. Who knows? So forgive yourself. Not only do you have a lot of data on you, everybody's got a lot of data on them. That's it for today. We're almost there. Just 2 days left of the 30-Day Solo Podcast Challenge. Go to bigpodcast.com/subscribe. That way you won't miss these last 2 days. You won't miss the concluding episode. I've made it easy for you. When you go to bigpodcast.com/subscribe, there are 3 buttons. That smartphone that's listening to you right now, I got a button for it. Click it. iPhone, Android, whichever smartphone you use, there's a button for it. I've got an RSS button for you. One click is all it takes. You'll be instantly subscribed. And while you are there, you'll be able to get my free podcast toolkit, 25 episode templates, social media templates, my guest interviewing process, everything you need to make your podcast episodes so easy to produce and make episodes that people are attracted to and will want to pass on to their friends, tell people about, and keep listening to. Thank you so much for listening to the 30-Day Solo Podcast Challenge. I'll see you tomorrow on the next episode.